One of the many things you might notice after completing the Outlast Trials and being reborn is the similarities in the narrative to Outlast 2, including some very interesting callbacks and hidden information that can be linked back to the previous title. And after doing a community poll, it was clear that you guys wanted to see exactly what similarities the two titles have and what could be found. And to be honest, I kind of wanted an excuse to look into this information myself, because it's interesting for me also. I think it goes without saying, but spoilers for Outlast 2 and Outlast Trials ahead. Firstly, let's establish a very basic timeline. The events of Outlast Trials predominantly take place in 1959 at the Sinala facility in Arizona, while Outlast 2 takes place in October 2013, also within Arizona. So that's a 54-year time gap. But the foundations of the Outlast 2 story can be seen within the Outlast Trials story. Now, one of the biggest similarities, and probably the most obvious, comes at the end of Outlast Trials when you have been reborn. When you exit the facility after your final trial, you will walk through a door and awake within an endless landscape of water, as a light can be seen in the distance. But the sound of the light is what makes it most interesting. A similar light can be found in Outlast 2, which we find out later to be coming from some nearby radio towers that are causing mayhem to the inhabitants of Temple Gate. I'll now play them back to back. So, why would the radio towers be in Outlast Trials? Well, because the developers said as much in an interview, when they mentioned that the Sinala facility was built near where Temple Gate would eventually be 54 years later, and the radio towers themselves were likely created during the same period that the Sinala facility was created, since their purpose was to create an isolated environment for testing mind control experiments with powerful radio frequencies. And as for the years that went on after the trials at the Sinala facility, Murkoff were able to use the same radio towers to test experiments on the village population within Temple Gate. We can even find a picture within the trials that show the radio towers in the background during the construction period of the Sinala facility. Another clear comparison between the two comes in the form of a very beefy bad man, Sullivan Noth. And if you played through Outlast 2, you'll probably remember old Papa Noth and his crazy shenanigans that he was getting into at Temple Gate. Well, it's revealed in a document that can be found within the Sinala facility in 1959 that Sullivan Noth was actually a previous reagent of the Murkoff trials. He was part of the original series of trials that took place in the mid-1950s, the same ones that Mother Gooseberry and Leland Coyle participated in. He was Reagent 1616 within the program, and the first document involving him describes Noth in 1958, selling his unwanted possessions and boarding a bus to Albuquerque, New Mexico. During surveillance of Noth, he applies for jobs at 2 different shoe stores and a photography studio, with an abiding interest in the ladies. Not to mention that he is described as having surprising charisma despite looking like an overboiled sausage. And we know from a developer's insight that Sullivan Noth once worked as a shoe salesman in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Within the trials, Murkoff described Noth as having a fascination with metal that would be described in more detail in the Human Compass document that shows that Noth would hold metal to his eye or mouth and turn in circles, and create headings based on the direction that he would face, even surprising the surveillance team when they traced his headings. They would converge within 40 miles of the Sinala facility, the place he was once a reagent, and possibly a big reason that he went on to build Temple's Gate there years later, as he followed where his compass told him to go. And his whole Human Compass deal continues in a conversation that he had with a woman while under surveillance, where he explains to the woman that he can use metal to feel a tug towards a particular direction, saying that there is something west that he needs to see. The woman asks him if there is something tugging at him right now before using the word Sully. He corrects her and uses the name Sullivan, further iterating the fact that Reagent 1616 is in fact Sullivan Noth from Outlast 2. And it's my guess that the strange electrical force that Sullivan is feeling could possibly be from the radio towers that we mentioned before. And if we remember from the final phone call between the reagent and Easterman at the very end of the game when you're in Cuba, the words used over the phone were Spider Eye Lamb.
Spider Eye Lamb.
The same words that you must hear over the frequencies during the final trial within the Signala facility. In Chapter 2 of the Gospel of Noth, there is a mention of these three words, as described by Noth, since he states that he heard a voice in the static. The paragraph is as followed: "And when called into account by the Father, defend his heaven by the spilling of the heart's blood of the spider-eyed lamb, the enemy, the unborn prince of lies." The voice Sullivan was hearing in the static was very likely Easterman, and the words described likely come from his subconscious mind with regard to his previous experiments in Signala. And it's pretty crazy to think that even after 54 years, the aftermath of the trials within the Signala facility is still in full effect in the surrounding area, while Murkoff continues to have its hold on the people of Temple Gate. And that is all the connections that I could find between Outlast 2 and Outlast Trials. Please do let me know in the comments down below if I have missed anything, and if you have any theories of your own in regards to the two being linked. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, and we have a bunch more videos on the channel if you want to go and check them out and see what you might like. Until next time, peace.